The suffocating darkness of Guadalcanal, October 1942. The Solomon Islands, a name soon to be etched in the annals of history, hung heavy with oppressive humidity and the unseen hum of jungle life. Private Robert Young Deere, of the 164th Infantry Regiment, found his fingers tracing the familiar contours of his M1 Garand rifle. This wasn't just a piece of metal and wood, it was his lifeline, his silent companion in a hellish landscape he'd only known for 11 days. His unit, the 1st U.S. Army formation to engage in offensive operations against the Japanese in this theater, stood ready. Around him, Marines, some still clutching their anachronistic bolt-action Springfield rifles, watched with a mixture of apprehension and weary admiration as the Army soldiers settled into position, their semi-automatic M1s, each loaded with an 8-round en-bloc clip, silently waiting. Then it came. A sound that ripped through the night, silencing the jungle symphony and freezing the blood of every American soldier. Thousands of Japanese troops screaming "Banzai" and "Totsugeki" at the top of their lungs began their charge. This wasn't just noise. It was an ancestral war cry, a declaration of unwavering spiritual resolve designed to shatter enemy morale. Among the attacking force, Lieutenant Kenji Yamamoto of the 29th Infantry Regiment pushed forward, his Type 38 Arisaka rifle proving an awkward beast in the dense undergrowth. Its exceptionally long 31.4-inch barrel, once an advantage on open battlefields, snagged on vines and brushed against leaves, betraying his position. His rifle's 5-round internal magazine, loaded with 6.5 50mm Arisaka rounds, demanded a deliberate 4-step bolt action after each shot. Up, back, forward, down, a ritual of manual labor that felt agonizingly slow in the face of imminent chaos. Behind him, newer recruits carried the Type 99, chambered in the more powerful 7.7 58mm cartridge, but still, critically, a bolt action. Still limited to 5 rounds, still requiring the slow dance of stripper clips for reloading. What unfolded over the next 12 hours at Henderson Field was more than just a battle. It was a brutal, visceral demonstration of a technological chasm. A chasm that would define infantry combat in the Pacific and fundamentally alter the course of the war. It revealed how industrial innovation, combined with the strategic foresight to equip a fighting force with cutting-edge technology, could deliver an overwhelming advantage that the enemy never truly anticipated, and, tragically, never matched. This wasn't merely about courage or determination, qualities the Japanese displayed in spades, but about a stark, unforgiving arithmetic of firepower. The M1 Garand's semi-automatic action, its 8-round capacity, and the potent .30-06 Springfield cartridge gave American forces a rate of fire and a stopping power that their Japanese counterparts, armed with bolt-action Arisaka rifles, simply could not contend with. This disparity in small arms capability wouldn't be confined to Guadalcanal. It would echo across thousands of engagements, from the sweltering jungles of New Guinea to the volcanic ash of Iwo Jima, becoming a silent yet significant contributor to the eventual American victory. It was a brutal lesson in the often overlooked truism of modern conflict. Technology, when effectively deployed and mass-produced, amplifies human effort to a degree that sheer will alone cannot overcome. To truly understand this profound difference, we must delve into the origins of these two iconic rifles. The M1 Garand, often hailed as the greatest battle implement ever devised by General George S. Patton, emerged from the visionary mind of Canadian-American designer John Cantius Garand. His journey began in 1919 at the renowned Springfield Armory, a crucible of American small arms innovation. It was a long, arduous process. 17 years of painstaking development, rigorous testing, and meticulous refinement. The rifle wasn't born overnight. It was forged in a persistent pursuit of mechanical perfection and combat effectiveness. The U.S. Army officially adopted Garand's design on January 9, 1936, a landmark moment that positioned America as the first nation to issue a semi-automatic rifle as standard equipment to its infantry forces. This was not a minor upgrade. It was a fundamental redefinition of the individual soldier's offensive capability. The rifle fired the formidable 30 Hars 06 Springfield cartridge, launching a 150-grain M2 ball projectile at a blistering 2,800 feet per second from its 24-inch barrel, generating a substantial 2,056 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. This wasn't just a projectile, it was a kinetic hammer blow, capable of penetrating cover and delivering decisive stopping power. The true genius of Garand's design lay in its gas-operated rotating bolt system. Picture this. A tiny portion of the propellant gas, generated by the cartridge's ignition, was ingeniously tapped from a port near the muzzle. This gas pressure then drove an operating rod, which in turn cycled the rifle's action automatically. Each pull of the trigger resulted in a chain reaction. One round fired, the gas pressure automatically ejected the spent casing, and a fresh round was swiftly chambered. All of this happened without any manual intervention from the shooter. The implications for a soldier in combat were revolutionary. A trained soldier could unleash between 40 and 50 aimed shots per minute, a staggering output compared to the mere 15 to 20 rounds per minute achievable with a traditional bolt-action rifle. And the 8-round on-block clip, inserted from above into the fixed magazine, could be reloaded in under 3 seconds by a practiced rifleman. This wasn't just faster. It was a tactical advantage that fundamentally shifted the momentum of a firefight. The road to the M1's perfection, however, was paved with challenges. Early prototypes experimented with a primer-actuated system, which, while innovative, proved unreliable under battlefield conditions. There were also debates over ammunition. The rifle was initially conceived around the more compact .276 Peterson cartridge, a forward-thinking design that offered less recoil and potentially greater ammunition capacity. But in 1932, General Douglas MacArthur, a figure of immense influence, intervened. His directive was clear: retain the venerable 36 Springfield round. This decision was largely driven by practical considerations: the existing colossal stockpiles of 30 Melrose 6 ammunition, a legacy of World War I. While this choice initially delayed production, it ultimately proved fortuitous. The powerful 30-06 cartridge, already a proven performer, provided excellent long-range accuracy and robust stopping power, capabilities that would prove invaluable in the vast and varied terrain of World War II. It's a classic example of a strategic decision, made for logistical reasons, inadvertently enhancing combat effectiveness. Across the Pacific, on the Japanese side, the Arisaka rifles traced their lineage back to Colonel Narakira Arisaka's original Type 30 design of 1897. This rifle was developed to replace the woefully inadequate Murata rifles then in service, a testament to Japan's early recognition of the need for modern small arms. By World War II, Japanese forces primarily relied on two main variants: the Type 38, adopted in 1905, and the Type 99, introduced in 1939, the 2509th year of the Japanese calendar, reflecting their unique dating system. The Type 38, the older of the two, fired the 6.55 50mm semi-rimmed cartridge. Its 139-grain bullet traveled at 25,100 feet per second, generating approximately 650 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. While lighter and producing less recoil, allowing soldiers to carry more ammunition, this round would, as the war progressed, prove to be a significant handicap, lacking the stopping power needed against well-entrenched positions or rapidly moving targets. The Type 99, designed to address these deficiencies, utilized the more powerful 7.7 58 cartridge. This round launched a heavier 182-grain bullet at 2,400 feet per second, with a more respectable 2,300 foot-pounds of energy. Both Arisaka variants, however, shared a fundamental characteristic. They were bolt-action rifles, equipped with 5-round internal magazines loaded via 5-round stripper clips. This manual, deliberate process was the core of their operational limitation. One notable feature of the Type 38 was its exceptional 31.4-inch barrel length, making it one of the longest infantry rifles ever fielded. This design choice contributed to superb long-range accuracy, a virtue in open European-style conflicts. However, in the brutal, close-quarters jungle combat of the Pacific, where engagement distances rarely exceeded 100 yards and often devolved into point-blank encounters, this length proved to be an extreme hindrance. It was unwieldy, snagging on foliage, difficult to bring to bear quickly, and nearly impossible to maneuver effectively within the cramped confines of bunkers or fortified positions. The Type 99, with its shorter 25.9-inch barrel, was a more manageable weapon, but its introduction in 1939 meant it arrived too late to fully replace the Type 38 across the vast Imperial Japanese Army. This created a logistical nightmare, with 2 different ammunition types needing to be supplied to frontline units, a problem that would plague Japanese forces throughout the war. Despite these limitations, the Arisaka action itself was remarkably strong. Post-war testing, surprisingly, proved its action to be even more robust than the American Springfield, the British Lee Enfield, or the German Mauser actions. These rifles also incorporated innovative features, such as a safety mechanism that could be operated silently, a tactical advantage for stealth operations, and a clever gas escape system integrated into the bolt design, offering protection to the shooter in the rare event of a ruptured cartridge case. These were commendable engineering achievements, reflective of Japanese craftsmanship and attention to detail. However, these individual strengths, no matter how ingenious, ultimately could not overcome the fundamental and glaring limitation of manual bolt operation in an era where firepower and speed of engagement were becoming increasingly paramount. The tide of warfare was shifting, and the Arisaka, for all its inherent quality, was caught fighting the last war. The industrial might that underpinned America's technological advantage became starkly apparent when examining rifle production figures. Between 1936 and 1945, American factories churned out approximately 5.4 million M1 Garand rifles. Springfield Armory, the birthplace of the M1, led this colossal effort, producing 3.5 million units. Winchester Repeating Arms Company contributed another impressive 530,180 rifles, and later, during the Korean War, companies like International Harvester and Harrington and Richardson would join the production effort. Peak production at Springfield Armory alone reached an astounding 1,000 rifles per day by January 1944, with Winchester achieving 600 rifles daily at their height. This monumental output ensured that by mid-1943, virtually every American infantry soldier and Marine in the Pacific was armed with a semi-automatic M1 Garand. The U.S. military's allocation system was shrewd, prioritizing combat units. Even the Marine Corps, initially hesitant to adopt the M1 due to concerns about ammunition waste and a perceived degradation of marksmanship standards, began receiving 22,000 M1 Garands per month in early 1943. By the end of fiscal year 1942, the Marine Corps possessed 62,186 M1 Garands, though not all had yet reached the front lines. This aggressive rearmament strategy demonstrated a clear understanding that superior individual firepower would be a decisive factor in the grueling island-hopping campaigns. Japanese production, in stark contrast, presented a vastly different picture. From 1905 to 1945, Japan manufactured approximately 3 million Type 38 rifles across multiple arsenals, including Koshiawa, later Tokyo, Kokura, Nagoya, and the Mukden Arsenal in occupied Manchuria. Type 99 production from 1939 to 1945 reached roughly 3.5 million units, produced at 9 different arsenals, including 2 outside Japan proper, Mukden in Manchukuo and Jinsen in Korea. While these numbers, totaling over 6 million rifles, might seem substantial on paper, they masked a critical weakness. Japan never achieved the consistent, high-volume production rates necessary to fully modernize its infantry arms across the entire military. The industrial base, while growing, was simply not geared for the scale and complexity required to equip every frontline soldier with a semi-automatic weapon. Consequently, many second-line troops, garrison forces, and naval infantry units were still armed with older Type 38 rifles at war's end, exacerbating logistical complications with 2 different ammunition types in constant use. American M1 Garand production maintained remarkably consistent quality throughout the war, a testament to robust industrial processes and stringent quality control. Springfield Armory's procedures were legendary. Any rifle that failed to group within 5 inches at 100 yards was rejected. Furthermore, the interchangeability of parts between rifles from different manufacturers was rigorously enforced through detailed specifications and precise gauging requirements. This meant a damaged M1 Garand could be quickly repaired in the field using parts salvaged from other rifles, regardless of their origin, a crucial advantage in sustained combat. Even as the war progressed, continuous improvements were implemented. The adoption of enhanced heat treatment processes in 1942, for instance, actually increased receiver strength over pre-war production models. Finishes evolved not just for economy, but for practicality. The switch from traditional blued steel to parkerizing significantly improved corrosion resistance in the notoriously brutal tropical environments of the Pacific. Walnut stocks, due to wartime shortages, gave way to birch and other hardwoods, but functionality and reliability never suffered. Late-war simplifications, such as stamped trigger guards replacing milled ones, were thoroughly tested to ensure they did not compromise the rifle's legendary dependability. This relentless focus on quality and consistency, even under immense pressure, ensured that every M1 Garand delivered to a soldier was a reliable, effective weapon. Japanese manufacturing quality, conversely, deteriorated markedly as the war progressed. Early Type 99 rifles were surprisingly innovative, showcasing a sophisticated engineering approach. They featured chrome-lined barrels, a pioneering feature, making them the first military rifle to incorporate this for extended barrel life and ease of cleaning. They boasted anti-aircraft sights with folding arms for leading aerial targets, dust covers to protect the action from the elements, and even integral wire monopods for enhanced stability in prone firing positions. The finish was a deep, lustrous blue, and stocks were crafted from quality Japanese hardwood with precise inletting. These were rifles built with pride and attention to detail. However, by 1944, the relentless pressure of war and severe material shortages had stripped away these refinements. Last-ditch rifles emerged, starkly different from their predecessors. These late-war models exhibited rough machining marks, simplified fixed rear sights that replaced the complex ladder sights, crude wooden butt plates replacing metal, and inferior wood with poor fitting. Some final production rifles lacked even basic finishing, with visible tool marks on all metal surfaces, a testament to the desperate rush to arm a dwindling fighting force. The chrome lining disappeared as chromium became a scarce strategic resource. Monopods were eliminated, and even the revered Imperial chrysanthemum marking, a symbol of the emperor himself, became crudely stamped rather than precisely rolled. This dramatic decline in quality reflected a military-industrial complex stretched to its breaking point, forced to prioritize quantity over quality, a choice that would have profound implications for the soldiers wielding these increasingly inferior weapons. The M1 Garand's semi-automatic action provided a multitude of tactical advantages far beyond just a higher rate of fire. After each shot, the soldier maintained his sight picture and cheek weld, while the rifle automatically cycled. This meant faster target reacquisition and, critically, more accurate follow-up shots. There was no need to break concentration, no physical exertion to manipulate a bolt. Just a squeeze of the trigger, a recoil, and the next round was ready. The operating rod, driven by gas pressure tapped near the muzzle, cycled with sufficient force to function reliably even when fouled with mud, sand, volcanic ash, or the inevitable carbon buildup from extended firing. This robustness was vital in the unforgiving environments of the Pacific. The en bloc clip system, while sometimes criticized for its distinctive ping sound upon ejection, allegedly alerting enemies that the rifle was empty, actually provided the fastest reload of any contemporary military rifle. A trained soldier could reload in under 3 seconds, a stark contrast to the 5 to 7 seconds required for a skilled user to reload a bolt-action rifle using stripper clips. This rapid reload capability meant less time exposed and more time delivering effective fire. Furthermore, the clip ejection provided immediate tactile and audible confirmation that the rifle was empty, preventing the confusion and dangerous uncertainty that could occur with rifles that didn't provide such a clear indication. The M1's weight of 9.5 pounds, while considered heavy by modern standards, was a purposeful design choice. It helped manage the substantial recoil of the .30 06 cartridge, enabling rapid, accurate follow-up shots. The rifle's overall length of 43.6 inches was remarkably well balanced, with its weight distributed between the heavy barrel and the solid wood stock. The 2-stage military trigger, while not match-grade, provided consistent performance that soldiers could master with training, ensuring reliability over precision. The Arisaka rifles, despite their robust construction and theoretical accuracy, suffered from inherent limitations of bolt-action operation that became critically evident in Pacific combat. After each shot, The soldier was forced to manually cycle the bolt through 4 distinct energy-consuming movements. Rotating the bolt handle upward, pulling it fully rearward to extract and eject the spent case, pushing it forward to strip a fresh round from the magazine and chamber it, and then rotating the handle down to lock. This deliberate process inevitably broke the shooter's firing position, disrupted their sight alignment, and, even for a well-trained soldier, required 2 to 3 precious seconds. In a firefight measured in fractions of a second, this delay was often fatal. The Type 38's extreme length of 50.3 inches, a design choice optimized for long-range accuracy, made it particularly unsuitable for the close quarters, claustrophobic realities of jungle warfare. Japanese soldiers repeatedly found the rifle catching on vines, proving difficult to swing onto targets in dense vegetation, and nearly impossible to use effectively within the cramped confines of bunkers or fortified positions. The long barrel, while offering excellent long-range accuracy with minimal bullet drop, was a debilitating liability when combat ranges rarely exceeded 100 yards and frequently occurred at conversational distances. The 5-round magazine capacity meant Japanese soldiers had to reload a staggering 60%, more often than their American counterparts, to fire the same number of rounds. Loading via stripper clips was a complex, multi-step process. Opening the bolt, positioning the clip correctly, pressing the rounds down into the magazine while simultaneously withdrawing the clip, then closing the bolt. This process, taking 5 to 7 seconds under ideal conditions, became exponentially longer under combat stress, in awkward firing positions, or with shaky hands. The physical and mental energy expended in these mechanical operations stole precious seconds, turning courageous charges into suicidal endeavors. The .30-06 Springfield cartridge, fired by the M1 Garand, was already standard throughout the U.S. military. This wasn't by accident. It was a deliberate, strategic decision dating back to the early 20th century. This commonality simplified logistics immensely. A single ammunition type could supply not only rifles, but also automatic rifles, like the Browning Automatic Rifle, or BAR, and various machine guns, M1917 Browning, M1919 Browning. This rimless cartridge design fed reliably from clips, belts, and magazines, a fundamental advantage in ensuring consistent firepower across the board. American ammunition production was staggering. The Lake City Army ammunition plant alone could churn out 200 million rounds annually by 1943. Frankfurt Arsenal, the Denver Ordnance Plant, and other facilities added hundreds of millions more rounds to this colossal output. Furthermore, quality control was paramount, ensuring consistent ballistics. M2 ball ammunition, for instance, maintained a velocity variation of less than 40 feet per second between lots. This meant every round a soldier fired would perform predictably, a vital element of combat confidence. Japanese forces, regrettably, faced a far more complex and problematic ammunition situation. Units equipped with Type 38 rifles required 6.5 minimum semi-rimmed ammunition, while those with Type 99s needed 7.7 handles 58 mm rounds. The 6th round, while generating less recoil and theoretically allowing soldiers to carry more ammunition, proved inadequate against covered positions and often lacked the necessary stopping power, particularly in jungle environments where targets were frequently obscured. The 7.7 mm round addressed these deficiencies, offering improved performance, but critically, it created a dual supply requirement. This 2-caliber system created persistent logistical problems, leading to tragic inefficiencies and, often, a fatal lack of effective ammunition at critical junctures. Documented instances include the 23rd Infantry Regiment on Guadalcanal, receiving 7.7 mm ammunition for their Type 38 rifles, rendering both their weapons and the received ammunition utterly useless. Similar mix-ups plagued Japanese forces during the grueling Philippines campaign and on isolated island garrisons, where every bullet counted. Furthermore, the semi-rimmed design of the 6.5 mm cartridge occasionally caused feeding problems in tropical conditions, where ammunition could corrode, swell, or simply gum up the intricate mechanisms. These logistical woes, a direct consequence of an unstandardized small arms strategy, were an invisible but constant drain on Japanese combat effectiveness. Let's return to Guadalcanal, the proving ground for this technological clash. When the U.S. Army's 164th Infantry Regiment, a North Dakota National Guard unit, arrived on October 13, 1942, they brought with them something the Marines, who had been fighting tooth and nail for months, desperately coveted: M1 Garand rifles. The battle-hardened Marines, still primarily armed with M19903 Springfield bolt-action rifles, watched with a potent mixture of envy and skepticism as the Army soldiers unloaded their sleek, semi-automatic weapons. Would these dog faces and their newfangled rifles prove their worth? During the climactic battle for Henderson Field on October 24th to 25th, 1942, the answers came with brutal clarity. The advantages of the M1 Garand became undeniably, overwhelmingly clear. Staff Sergeant Mitchell Page, a Marine armed with a machine gun rather than a rifle, fought alongside soldiers of the 164th and witnessed their firepower firsthand. His account, like many others, painted a vivid picture of the M1's devastating impact. Private First Class James Cass of Company M, 164th Infantry, vividly recalled the terrifying onslaught. The Japs came at us in waves, barely visible in the darkness except for the glint of their bayonets. With our Garands, we could put 8 rounds into them before they covered 30 yards. Each man was like a machine gun section. We'd fire, the rifle would cycle itself, and we'd fire again. No working a bolt, no breaking our sight picture. Just squeeze, boom, squeeze, boom, 8 times before reloading. The 164th's companies were fed into the line piecemeal as the Japanese attack developed, reinforcing Marine positions that were beginning to buckle under the sheer weight of the banzai charges. The devastating, continuous semi-automatic fire from these fresh Army troops helped stabilize the line, turning what could have been a rout into a bloody, decisive stand. Colonel Bryant Moore, commanding the 164th, reported that his men expended over 250,000 rounds of 30 Henzo 6 ammunition in that 2-day battle. Japanese bodies stacked up in grim piles in front of positions held by the 164th, many killed by the rapid, accurate fire of the M1 Garands. Marine Private Robert Leckie, who would later author the powerful memoir Helmet for My Pillow, observed the Army troops in action, his initial skepticism giving way to awe. We thought they were green, these dog faces with their newfangled rifles. But when the Japs charged, those Garands spoke with a voice we'd never heard before. It was like a continuous roar, not the sporadic crack of our Springfields. This continuous roar wasn't just a sound. It was a psychological weapon, a constant, unrelenting wall of lead that eroded the morale and shattered the charges of even the most determined Japanese soldiers. Sergeant Masao Watanabe of the 29th Infantry Regiment, 2nd Division, Sendai, was one of the few who survived the October offensive at Guadalcanal. His post-war memoir, discovered in Japanese military archives, offers a chilling, vital counter-perspective. We were told the Americans were soft, that our Yamato spirit would overcome their material advantages. Our officers assured us that one Japanese soldier was worth 10 Americans. But when we charged their lines that October night, it was like running into a wall of lead. Every American soldier seemed to have an automatic weapon. Our Arisaka rifles, which we operated the same way our fathers had in the Russo-Japanese War, felt like antiques. We would fire once, work the bolt while taking cover, then fire again. In that same time, the Americans had already fired 4 or 5 rounds. Watanabe's stark observations highlighted a tragic tactical anachronism. Japanese tactics, honed against Chinese forces often armed with older weapons or limited ammunition, proved suicidal against the overwhelming American firepower. The banzai charge, which had scattered Chinese conscripts, melted away before American rifles that never seemed to stop firing. We could not get close enough to use our bayonets, Watanabe lamented. Our supposed advantage in spirit and close combat meant nothing when we were shot down 50 meters from their lines. It was a devastating realization. Courage, while vital, could not defy the laws of ballistics and rate of fire. Lieutenant Hiroshi Takahashi of the 230th Infantry Regiment provided another haunting perspective in a letter found on his body. His words resonate with a sense of desperate clarity. The American automatic rifles are devastating. Each soldier can fire as fast as our light machine guns. When we advance, it sounds like we are attacking a position defended entirely by machine guns. Our men fall before they can work their rifle bolts for a second shot. This wasn't merely a technological gap. It was an existential threat, redefining the very nature of infantry combat and exposing the vulnerabilities of an army clinging to a bygone era. As the war progressed, the lessons of Guadalcanal resonated. At Cape Gloucester, in December 1943, Marines of the 1st Marine Division, now fully equipped with M1 Garands after their earlier experiences, landed in torrential rain on New Britain. Private First Class Eugene Sledge, author of the seminal memoir With the Old Breed, later wrote about the M1's remarkable performance in the horrific, mud-drenched conditions. That Garand was the most reliable piece of equipment we had, in rain that came down like waterfalls, in mud that sucked at you like quicksand. That rifle kept firing. The Arisaka, with its bolt action, was simply no match. When they tried to set up positions in the jungle, Sledge continued, we could put so much lead into the trees that leaves would fall like rain. This rain of lead wasn't just suppressive fire, it was destructive, disorienting, and psychologically crippling. Marine Sergeant John Basilone, who earned the Medal of Honor on Guadalcanal primarily for his actions with machine guns, also carried an M1 Garand as his personal weapon. He noted, "The Garand gave every Marine the firepower of 3 men with bolt-action rifles. In the jungle, where you might only get a glimpse of the enemy for a second or two, being able to fire multiple shots without working a bolt meant the difference between killing him or him escaping to kill you later." In the chaotic, fleeting encounters of jungle warfare, that rapid follow-up shot was often the only shot that mattered. The impact of the M1 was tragically amplified during the Battle of Saipan in June 1944. There, The largest banzai charge of the Pacific War saw over 3,000 Japanese soldiers assault American lines in a desperate pre-dawn attack on July 7th. Private First Class Harold Agerholm of the 4th Marine Division, armed with his M1 Garand, helped repel this massive assault. Corporal John Miller recalled, "The Japs came at us shoulder to shoulder, screaming like banshees. Our Garands never stopped firing. As fast as we could pull the trigger, we fired. The ping of empty clips ejecting was constant, like some deadly music. The Japanese, with their bolt actions, simply could not match this volume of fire. They'd get one shot off, maybe two if they were lucky, before our semi-autos cut them down. It was a slaughter, a stark and bloody testament to the M1's tactical dominance." By Peleliu in September 1944, Japanese forces had learned from earlier defeats. Instead of suicidal banzai charges, they adopted a defense-in-depth strategy, fighting from elaborately fortified positions in caves and pillboxes. But even in this defensive role, the bolt-action Arisaka proved inferior. Marine Corporal R.V. Bergen recalled, "When we spotted a position, we could saturate it with rifle fire. 4 or 5 of us with Garands could put 40 rounds into a cave mouth in the time it took them to fire 5 or 6 shots back. We'd keep their heads down while other Marines maneuvered with flamethrowers or demolitions." The M1 Garand wasn't just for killing. It was a suppressive tool, enabling combined arms tactics and dramatically reducing American casualties by pinning down defenders. American training doctrine for the M1 Garand emphasized exploiting the rifle's semi-automatic capability while maintaining accuracy. At training camps across the United States, Fort Benning, Camp Perry, Fort Knox, and dozens of others, soldiers spent weeks mastering their rifles. The standard qualification course required engaging targets from 100 to 500 yards, with a strong emphasis on rapid target engagement and smooth trigger control. The Army's Field Manual 23 in 5, Basic Field Manual, U.S., Rifle, Caliber 30, M1, explicitly stated that soldiers should strive to achieve a sustained rate of 40 to 50 aimed shots per minute in combat. Training emphasized maintaining the sight picture hold, keeping proper sight alignment between shots, a capability unique to semi-automatic actions that didn't require breaking position. Soldiers learned to fire, observe impact, adjust, and re-engage quickly, taking full advantage of the M1's inherent speed. Ammunition allocation for training was generous by any standard. Basic trainees fired a minimum of 210 rounds during qualification, with additional ammunition provided for advanced training. Combat units preparing for deployment often fired thousands of rounds per soldier, a level of live fire training that built muscle memory, confidence, and a deep, intuitive understanding of their weapons' capabilities, proving invaluable in the chaotic crucible of combat. The Marine Corps, initially skeptical of the M1 Garand due to concerns about ammunition waste and a potential degradation of marksmanship standards, a core tenet of Marine identity, eventually developed even more intensive training programs. Marine doctrine emphasized not spray and pray, but accurate volume of fire. Rapid, aimed shots that exploited the M1's semi-automatic action while retaining the Corps' traditional marksmanship excellence. This adaptability in training, a willingness to evolve doctrine to match technological advancements, was a crucial factor in maximizing the M1's battlefield potential. Japanese marksmanship training, however, was deeply rooted in samurai traditions of precision and discipline. emphasizing the philosophy of one shot, one kill, Ichigeki Hisatsu. This principle reflected both spiritual beliefs about the warrior's focused intent and the practical limitation of their bolt-action rifles. Japanese soldiers underwent extensive training at long ranges, with the Type 38's exceptional accuracy at distance considered a primary virtue. The Imperial Japanese Army's training manual starkly stated, "The spirit of the attack must be the primary weapon of the infantry. The rifle and bayonet are merely extensions of the warrior's will." This profound emphasis on spiritual factors over material ones, a cultural predisposition to valorize human will above technological advantage, would prove catastrophically ineffective against American firepower. Japanese soldiers trained extensively in bayonet fighting, with daily practice in kata-like movements, and the Type 38's exceptional length theoretically made it superior to most rifles in bayonet combat. However, the realities of Pacific combat rarely offered the clear, long-range shots for which Japanese soldiers had trained. The dense jungle terrain of Guadalcanal, New Guinea, and other battlefields limited visibility to mere yards. The banzai charges that had succeeded against poorly equipped Chinese forces or colonial troops met devastating, futile failure against the relentless, overwhelming torrent of semi-automatic rifle fire. The sheer sound of massed M1 Garand fire became a psychological weapon in itself. The rapid, rhythmic crack of semi-automatic fire, punctuated by the distinctive metallic ping of ejecting clips, had a profoundly demoralizing effect on Japanese forces. A captured Japanese training document from 1943, a testament to this psychological impact, instructed soldiers. The American automatic rifles create a sound like many machine guns firing. Do not be discouraged by this volume of fire. Remember your spiritual superiority and press forward with determination. However, spiritual superiority, however admirable, proved woefully inadequate against material reality. Japanese soldier Yukio Nakamura, captured on Saipan, told interrogators, "We were told Americans were cowards who relied on machines instead of warrior spirit. But their rifles that fired without stopping, it was like fighting against a machine, not men. Our officers told us to charge with our bayonets, but we were cut down before we could get close enough to use them." This first-hand account brutally illustrates the psychological toll of facing an enemy whose individual firepower felt like an entire army. Conversely, American troops gained immense confidence from their firepower advantage. Marine Corporal James Russell recalled, "Knowing you could put 8 rounds downrange as fast as you could pull the trigger, it made you feel invincible. When the Japs charged, you didn't panic. You just started shooting and kept shooting until they stopped coming, or you heard that ping telling you to reload." This psychological boost, born from superior technology, was invaluable in sustaining morale through the brutal Pacific campaigns. At the squad level, the M1 Garand's advantage became even more pronounced, fundamentally altering small unit tactics. An American rifle squad of 12 men, armed with 10 M1 Garands and 2 Browning automatic rifles, bars, could deliver 400 to 500 aimed rounds per minute in sustained fire. A comparable Japanese squad, armed solely with Arisaka rifles, might manage 150 to 180 rounds per minute, and that's assuming well-trained soldiers maintaining maximum bolt action speed under ideal conditions. This glaring disparity fundamentally transformed combat. American squads could effectively conduct fire and maneuver, with one fire team laying down suppressive fire while another advanced, flanking or closing with the enemy. The sheer volume of accurate semi-automatic fire could keep enemy heads down, allowing American forces to overcome and destroy Japanese positions with significantly reduced risk. Japanese squads, limited by their bolt-action rifles, struggled to generate sufficient suppressive fire while maintaining any semblance of mobility, often becoming pinned down or cut off. At the company level, typically 200 men, the difference in firepower became overwhelming. An American rifle company could deliver truly devastating defensive fire against Japanese attacks. During the October 24th to 25th Battle for Henderson Field, companies of the 164th Infantry Regiment demonstrated this capability with chilling effectiveness. Company G, 164th Infantry, reported expending 30,000 rounds of .30.06 ammunition in one night of fighting, an average of 150 rounds per man, while suffering only light casualties themselves. The mathematics were inexorable. A Japanese battalion of 800 men conducting a banzai charge faced American companies capable of putting 8,000 aimed rounds downrange per minute. Even accounting for darkness, confusion, and fear, the volume of semi-automatic fire created kill zones that human courage alone simply could not overcome. It was a brutal calculus of survival, where the M1 Garand consistently tipped the scales in favor of the American soldier. The M1 Garand's superiority contributed directly to the success of the American island-hopping strategy. American forces could land on Japanese-held islands, confident in their ability to establish and hold beachheads against fierce counterattacks. The overwhelming firepower of M1-equipped infantry meant that smaller forces could effectively hold larger perimeters, allowing for the rapid buildup of forces necessary for breakout operations. On island after island, Tarawa, Kwajalein, Eniwetok, Saipan, Guam, Peleliu, Iwo Jima, Okinawa, the pattern repeated with grim predictability. Japanese forces, unable to match American firepower, were forced to resort to increasingly desperate tactics. Banzai charges, once a cornerstone of their offensive doctrine, gradually gave way to a deeply entrenched defense in depth. But even in these fortified positions, the slow rate of fire from bolt-action rifles meant Japanese soldiers could rarely exploit opportunities when Americans exposed themselves during assaults. The M1, therefore, wasn't just a tactical advantage. It was a strategic enabler, a weapon that fundamentally shaped the feasibility and ultimate success of the entire Pacific Campaign. The Japanese military's retention of bolt-action rifles stemmed significantly from their formative victory in the Russo-Japanese War of 1904 to 1905. In that conflict, Japanese infantry, armed with Type 30 and Type 35 Arisaka rifles, had defeated Russian forces through a combination of superior training, discipline, and tactical innovation. The decisive battles of Mukden and the harrowing siege of Port Arthur seemed to validate the supremacy of Japanese warrior spirit and traditional martial values over sheer material factors. This resounding success, however, inadvertently created an institutional blindness to technological change. The Japanese military establishment, dominated by officers who revered the Russo-Japanese War as Japan's coming of age as a great power, failed to recognize that warfare had fundamentally transformed. World War I, with its brutal trench warfare and the ascendancy of firepower over traditional maneuver, had unequivocally demonstrated the dominance of automatic weapons and concentrated artillery. But Japan, not having participated significantly in that conflict, regrettably failed to internalize its profound lessons. They remained fixated on a past victory, unwittingly condemning their future soldiers to face a modern war with outdated tools and doctrines. The American adoption of the M1 Garand, by contrast, directly reflected hard-learned lessons from World War I. General John J. Pershing, commander of the American Expeditionary Force, had personally witnessed the devastating effect of automatic weapons in the trenches of France. In 1918, he specifically called for the development of a semi-automatic rifle, stating with prescient clarity, "The soldier who can deliver the most accurate fire in the shortest time will dominate the battlefield of the future." This requirement launched the ambitious development process that would culminate in the M1 Garand. The United States spent nearly 2 decades perfecting the design, conducting extensive trials and, critically, building the vast industrial infrastructure necessary for its mass production. By 1936, when the M1 was officially adopted, America had created not just a superior rifle, but an entire system for producing, maintaining, and supplying it. A holistic approach to military readiness that was decades ahead of its time. The Japanese did eventually recognize the pressing need for semi-automatic rifles. Development of indigenous designs began in the 1930s, including the Type Ko rifle designed by Kajiro Nambu, and several other gas-operated prototypes. However, these efforts consistently received low priority. Precious resources were instead directed toward aircraft, naval vessels, and other programs deemed more critical for a nation attempting to project power across vast oceanic distances. The infantry rifle, the fundamental weapon of the ground soldier, was regrettably considered secondary. Most tellingly, when the Japanese finally attempted to copy the M1 Garand itself, producing what became known as the Type 4 rifle, often mistakenly called Type 5, they managed to produce only 250 part sets, with approximately 100 to 125 rifles actually assembled before the war's end. The Type 4, chambered for 700 Japanese ammunition, and fed from a 10-round internal magazine loaded with 2 5-round stripper clips, proved that Japan fully understood the M1's advantages. Their engineers were capable, their designs often innovative, but the crucial missing piece was the industrial capacity for mass production. The ability to turn a brilliant prototype into millions of battle-ready weapons. This industrial disparity, more than any other factor, sealed the fate of the Japanese infantrymen. The mathematics of firepower reveal an overwhelming American advantage that transcended mere numbers on a specification sheet. The M1 Garand, firing M2 ball ammunition, delivered 2,656 foot-pounds of energy at the muzzle. With a trained soldier capable of firing 40 rounds per minute, this translated to a staggering 106,040 foot-pounds of energy delivered per minute. A bolt-action Type 99 Arisaka, firing the 7mm round with 2,300 foot-pounds per shot at a practical rate of 15 rounds per minute, delivered only 3,500 foot-pounds per minute, less than 1/3 of the M1's energy output. This wasn't just a difference. It was a chasm in destructive potential. Furthermore, the 30-06 Springfield's trajectory, while having slightly more drop than the 6.5mm Arisaka at extreme ranges, proved superior at typical Pacific combat distances. At 300 yards, an unusually long engagement distance in jungle warfare, the 30-06 dropped 13.5 inches from the line of sight while still retaining a formidable 1,900 foot-pounds of energy. This was sufficient to penetrate multiple layers of dense jungle vegetation and still incapacitate enemy soldiers. The 6. 5mm Arisaka, while dropping only 11 inches at the same range, retained only 1,100 foot-pounds of energy, often proving insufficient to penetrate common jungle cover or deliver a decisive blow. U.S. Army ordnance tests, conducted at Aberdeen Proving Ground in 1940, scientifically quantified the M1's decisive advantage. In controlled trials, soldiers equipped with M1 Garands consistently achieved 24 aimed shots per minute at 200 yards, with an impressive 90% hit rate on man-sized targets. Soldiers armed with M19903 Springfields, functionally identical to Arisaka operation, managed only 10 aimed shots with 85% accuracy. In rapid-fire scenarios simulating response to a sudden attack, M1-equipped soldiers could engage 3 separate targets in the time bolt-action users engaged just one. Further testing examined sustained fire over longer periods. After 5 minutes of continuous firing, M1-equipped soldiers maintained 80% of their initial rate of fire, while bolt-action users dropped to 60%, due to the sheer physical fatigue of continuously working the bolt. The M1's semi-automatic operation required only trigger finger movement, while bolt-action operation demanded the gross motor movements of the entire arm and shoulder, a physically taxing and momentum-breaking process. Combat statistics from Pacific battles consistently revealed telling patterns. At Guadalcanal, Army units equipped with M1 Garands expended an average of 150 to 200 rounds per man per day of heavy combat. Marine units, still predominantly equipped with Springfield rifles, expended 60 to 80 rounds per man in similar conditions. This wasn't ammunition waste. It was the M1's inherent ability to deliver effective fire at fleeting targets, to suppress enemy positions, and to sustain aggressive engagements. Japanese forces, by comparison, rarely expended more than 40 to 50 rounds per man per day, limited by both their ammunition supply and the mechanical constraints of bolt-action operation. Captured Japanese after-action reports frequently cited crippling ammunition shortages, but even when ammunition was available, the slow rate of bolt-action fire inherently limited consumption, turning their already constrained supply into a self-fulfilling prophecy of inadequacy. Japanese military documents captured throughout the war revealed an increasing and desperate awareness of American firepower superiority. A report from Lieutenant General Harukichi Hayakutake, commanding the 17th Army on Guadalcanal, stated in November 1942, "Enemy rifle fire has density and accuracy beyond our expectations. Each enemy soldier appears to be armed with an automatic weapon. Our forces cannot achieve fire superiority even with numerical advantage. Recommend emphasis on night operations and infiltration tactics to negate enemy firepower advantage." By 1944, Japanese tactical doctrine had evolved to explicitly acknowledge American material superiority. The Instructions for the Decisive Battle, issued to defenders of the Mariana Islands, grimly stated, "The enemy's automatic rifles and machine guns create an impenetrable wall of fire during daylight. All attacks must be conducted at night or under cover of adverse weather. Daytime movement invites annihilation." This was a complete strategic shift, born from the bitter lessons learned at a terrible cost. Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi, the brilliant defender of Iwo Jima, wrote in January 1945, "The American automatic rifles are remarkable weapons. Each soldier possesses firepower equal to 3 or 4 of our riflemen. We must not waste lives in futile banzai charges against such firepower. Instead, we will make them pay for every meter of ground from fortified positions. His defensive strategy, consciously avoiding suicidal charges in favor of a devastating defense in depth, prolonged the battle and inflicted heavy casualties on American forces, but ultimately it could not overcome the fundamental American material superiority. The Japanese military did make several attempts to increase infantry firepower, a belated recognition of the strategic necessity. The Type 100 submachine gun, introduced in 1942, was intended to provide automatic fire capability to their infantry. However, production reached only about 27,000 units by war's end, a number utterly insufficient to make a strategic difference across a sprawling empire. Moreover, the weapon fired the relatively weak 8mm Nambu pistol cartridge, lacking the range and stopping power desperately needed for Pacific combat. More revealing, and tragically ironic, was the Japanese effort to copy the M1 Garand itself. When American forces captured the Yokosuka Naval Arsenal in 1945, they discovered the Type 4 rifle program. Engineers at Yokosuka had meticulously reverse-engineered captured M1 Garands, modifying the design to use Japanese 7mm ammunition and feed from a 10-round internal magazine loaded with standard 5-round stripper clips. The Japanese had even attempted to improve certain aspects, incorporating a rubber recoil pad and adding a last-round bolt hold-open feature, a testament to their engineering prowess. However, Japanese industry, already stretched thin, proved simply incapable of mass-producing this complex design. While they had manufactured parts for approximately 250 rifles, only 100 to 125 had been assembled into complete weapons. The Type 4 program, a desperate attempt to bridge the firepower gap, revealed that Japanese military engineers fully understood the M1's advantages, but their nation lacked the industrial infrastructure and raw materials to produce it in meaningful numbers. This failure to industrialize, to convert ingenuity into mass production, was a critical factor in their eventual defeat. The Battle of Okinawa, fought from April through June 1945, provided the ultimate blood-soaked test of American firepower versus Japanese determination. Here, on Japan's doorstep, 180,000 American troops faced 120,000 Japanese defenders in what would become the bloodiest Pacific battle. The Japanese, under the pragmatic Lieutenant General Mitsuru Ushijima, had learned from previous defeats. Instead of wasteful banzai charges, they prepared elaborate, deeply fortified defensive positions, cunningly integrated into Okinawa's rocky, unforgiving terrain. Yet, even in this meticulously planned defense, the inherent limitations of bolt-action rifles proved critical. When American forces advanced, Japanese defenders armed with Arisaka rifles, no matter their courage, could rarely deliver sufficient volume of fire to effectively stop them. Private First Class Desmond Doss, the conscientious objector medic who would later receive the Medal of Honor for his incredible bravery, later described the sound of American rifles supporting his perilous rescue efforts. The Garands were firing so fast it sounded like one continuous roar. Our boys could keep Japanese heads down while I went out for wounded. If they'd all had bolt-action rifles like the Japanese, I never could have saved those men. His testimony, from the perspective of a non-combatant directly dependent on suppressive fire, underscores the M1's life-saving capabilities. On May 4, 1945, the Japanese launched their only major counteroffensive of the battle. 5,000 Japanese soldiers attacked American lines in a coordinated assault designed to break through to the American rear areas. The attack began at 0430 hours with the largest artillery barrage Japanese forces had managed in the Pacific War. 12,000 rounds in 30 minutes. As Japanese infantry emerged from their positions and charged across open ground, they met an impenetrable wall of American fire. Private First Class Martin Brennan of the 17th Infantry Regiment recalled, "They came at us in waves, but not the wild banzai charges we'd seen before. These were organized attacks with fire support, but our Garands never stopped firing. 8 shots, ping, reload, 8 more shots. The noise was incredible. The Japanese with their bolt actions would fire once, maybe twice. Then our semi-auto fire would cut them down." The attack shattered against American firepower with horrific Japanese losses. 4,000 dead versus 714 American casualties. The rapid fire of thousands of M1 Garands, supported by automatic weapons and artillery, created killing fields where even the most fervent Japanese courage could not overcome material disadvantage. Even when Japanese soldiers reached American lines in close quarters, the rapid-fire advantage of semi-automatic rifles proved decisive. Sergeant William Manchester, who would later become a renowned historian, fought on Okinawa with the 29th Marines. He wrote, "The M1 rifle was our best friend." In the chaos of close combat, being able to fire 8 times without working a bolt saved countless American lives. I saw Japanese soldiers trying to work their bolt actions while under fire, their hands shaking, fumbling with the mechanism while our boys simply kept pulling triggers. This was the M1's ultimate advantage. It reduced the margin for human error, amplified courage, and simplified the deadliest task imaginable: planning for Operation Downfall, the massive invasion of Japan scheduled to begin with Operation Olympic in November 1945. Assumed the M1 Garand would play an absolutely crucial role. Military planners, studying casualty rates from Okinawa and other Pacific battles, calculated that American forces would need overwhelming firepower superiority to overcome the expected fanatical Japanese resistance on the home islands. Production plans called for 500,000 replacement M1 rifles for the operation, with Springfield Armory and Winchester increasing production to a combined 2,000 rifles daily by August 1945. International Harvester was scheduled to begin production at a third facility, underscoring the urgency. The ammunition requirement was staggering. Planners estimated needing 100 million rounds of 30-06 monthly for rifle use alone. A stark testimony to the volume of fire expected from M1-equipped troops. Intelligence estimates suggested Japanese homeland defense would include 2.5 million Arisaka rifles in military hands, plus millions more distributed to civilian militia units. However, many of these were training rifles, obsolete models, or crude, last-ditch single-shot weapons. The Type 9, substitute standard rifles being produced in 1945, were so crude that American intelligence questioned their safety for the user, highlighting the severe degradation of Japanese industrial capability. American planners calculated that each invasion beach would require the suppression of Japanese positions by naval gunfire and aerial bombardment, followed by assault troops whose M1 Garands would provide the sustained volume of fire needed to overcome deeply entrenched defenders. Studies of Pacific battles showed that American forces with semi-automatic rifles suffered 40% fewer casualties than projected for troops armed with bolt-action rifles in similar situations, a compelling statistical endorsement of the M1's effectiveness. The Japanese, fully recognizing their inherent firepower disadvantage, planned to rely on suicide tactics, using civilians as human shields, and close-quarters combat in urban areas where rifle advantages would be minimized. Secret Japanese plans discovered after the war revealed desperate measures: bamboo spears for civilians, suicide swimmers with explosive charges, and even programs to spread biological weapons. The Arisaka rifle, once the pride of the Imperial Army, had been relegated to just one component of a desperate, last-ditch defense. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, of course, ended the war before Operation Downfall commenced, saving potentially millions of lives on both sides. Post-war analysis suggested American casualties could have reached 500,000 to 1 million, with the Japanese casualties in the millions. The M1 Garand's firepower advantage would have been crucial in this horrific scenario, but at a terrible cost in lives on both sides. The M1 Garand's undeniable success profoundly influenced military rifle development worldwide. The Soviet Union, which had struggled with limited production of its SVT-40 semi-automatic rifle during World War II, developed the SKS carbine, directly influenced by captured M1 Garands. China's Type 56 carbine was essentially a copy of the Soviet SKS, propagating the M1's lineage. France developed the MAS-49, intelligently drawing lessons from both the M1 Garand and their own pre-war semi-automatic experiments. Even Britain, traditionally conservative in small arms adoption and largely satisfied with their venerable Lee Enfield rifles during the war, recognized the paradigm shift and began developing semi-automatic rifles immediately post-war. The Belgian FN-49, the Swiss STGW-57, and the Italian BM-59 all reflected lessons learned from America's semi-automatic success in World War II, testifying to the M1's enduring impact on global military design philosophy. The M1 Garand continued its storied service through the Korean War, where it again proved decisively superior to the bolt-action rifles used by Chinese and North Korean forces. In the early stages of that brutal conflict, American forces in Korea, armed with M1 Garands and supported by automatic weapons, repeatedly stopped massive Chinese human wave attacks, eerily reminiscent of the desperate Japanese banzai charges. The rifle served until it was gradually replaced by the M14 in the late 1950s and early 1960s, marking the end of its frontline service but not its legacy. In a remarkable historical irony, the United States equipped the newly formed Japanese Self-Defense Forces, JSDF, with M1 Garand rifles in the 1950s. Japanese soldiers who had once faced this devastating weapon now trained with it, experiencing firsthand the firepower advantage their predecessors had tragically confronted. The JSDF received approximately 150,000 M1 Garands through American military assistance programs, a powerful symbol of a new era. Japanese veterans interviewed in the 1960s consistently cited American firepower, particularly the M1 Garand, as a decisive factor in their defeat. Saburo Sakai, Japan's leading surviving fighter ace, articulated this sentiment with chilling clarity. We could match American courage. We could match American tactics, but we could never match American firepower. Every GI with his automatic rifle was worth 3 of our soldiers. This was the painful, yet ultimately unavoidable truth. Today, both the M1 Garand and Arisaka rifles are highly sought after by collectors, though for vastly different reasons. The Civilian Marksmanship Program, CMP, has sold over 500,000 surplus M1 Garands to American citizens since its inception, making it one of the most common and beloved military collectibles. The rifle's distinctive ping has become iconic in popular culture, featured in countless war films, television shows, and video games. The M1's reputation as the greatest battle implement ever devised, General Patton's famous assessment, remains largely unchallenged among World War II infantry weapons. Modern shooting competitions still feature M1 Garand matches, with the rifle proving remarkably accurate even by contemporary standards, a testament to its timeless design. Japanese Arisaka rifles, particularly those with intact Imperial chrysanthemum markings, are highly prized collectibles. The chrysanthemum, a sacred symbol of the emperor, was typically ground off rifles before surrender to prevent dishonor, making intact examples exceedingly rare and valuable. Modern testing has confirmed the Arisaka action to be exceptionally strong, even stronger than the Mauser or Springfield actions. But, as we've seen, this inherent strength could not overcome the fundamental disadvantage of bolt-action operation in an evolving battlefield. Interestingly, both rifles have even seen combat in the 21st century. M1 Garands have appeared in conflicts in the Middle East, supplied decades ago through various military aid programs. Arisaka rifles have been documented in use by insurgent forces in Afghanistan and Myanmar, a testament to the durability of their design, even if they are tactically obsolete. On that fateful October night at Henderson Field in 1942, Private Robert Young Deere of the 164th Infantry Regiment and thousands of other American soldiers demonstrated the devastating effectiveness of semi-automatic rifle fire. They were proving a fundamental truth of modern warfare. Technological superiority, backed by an unyielding industrial production base, could determine the outcome of battle, regardless of individual human courage or determination. The M1 Garand delivered 40 to 50 aimed shots per minute versus the Arisaka's 15 to 20. 8 rounds before reloading versus 5. Semi-automatic operation versus manual bolt manipulation. A continuous, suppressing weight of fire that could stop a banzai charge in its tracks versus single shots that required breaking sight picture to chamber the next round. These stark mathematical realities, multiplied across millions of individual firefights from Guadalcanal to Okinawa, irrevocably helped determine the Pacific War's outcome. Lieutenant Kenji Yamamoto, who led that charge on October 24, 1942, with his Type 38 Arisaka, tragically did not survive to see the dawn. His rifle, with its exceptional accuracy and admirable construction, its smooth bolt action and strong receiver, could not overcome the wall of semi-automatic fire that met his desperate attack. Found after the battle, his weapon had 3 rounds remaining in the magazine. He had managed to fire only twice while advancing 100 yards under the concentrated, relentless fire of M1 Garands. Around him lay dozens of his soldiers, most with full or nearly full magazines in their Arisakas, having been cut down before they could effectively return fire. It's a sobering image, a silent, grim testament to the M1's lethal efficiency. The story of the M1 Garand versus the Arisaka rifles ultimately tells a larger, profound truth about World War II in the Pacific. That courage and determination, while admirable, vital, and necessary, could not overcome the brutal arithmetic of firepower. The United States had produced 5.4 million M1 Garands by war's end, ensuring that virtually every American rifleman possessed semi-automatic firepower. Japan despite producing over 6. 5 million rifles total, never escaped the technological constraints of bolt-action operation. Never could match the volume of aimed fire that semi-automatic rifles produced. General George S. Patton's assessment of the M1 Garand as the greatest battle implement ever devised was not hyperbole but a mathematical and tragically human fact. From the steaming jungles of Guadalcanal, where the rifle first proved its worth in American Army hands, to the volcanic ash of Iwo Jima, where Marines used it to break Japanese strongpoints. From the monsoon-soaked horror of Cape Gloucester to the desperate urban combat anticipated for Japan itself, the M1 Garand proved itself as more than just a rifle. It was a war-winning weapon that gave American forces a decisive edge in the most brutal theater of the world's most terrible war. The distinctive ping of an ejecting en-bloc clip became the unofficial sound of American victory in the Pacific. It was a sound that meant 8 enemy soldiers would never reach American lines. A sound that meant another Japanese position had been suppressed, another island secured, another step taken toward Tokyo Bay. Against it, the bolt-action Arisaka, for all its virtues of strength and accuracy, was simply fighting the last war with the last war's technology. In the final analysis, the Pacific War was won not by any single weapon or battle, but by the cumulative effect of American industrial might and technological superiority. The M1 Garand stood as perhaps the most visible and visceral symbol of this advantage at the individual soldier level. Every GI or Marine with an M1 possessed the firepower of 3 enemy soldiers, an advantage that no amount of spiritual training, warrior tradition, or individual bravery could ultimately overcome. The Japanese soldier, brave as he was, dedicated as he was, skilled as he was, could work his rifle bolt only so fast. And in modern war, rate of fire multiplied by accuracy equaled survival. The Arisaka rifles now rest in museums and private collections, respected for their quality and historical significance, a testament to a proud, if ultimately outmoded, military tradition. The M1 Garand likewise has passed into history, though many still function perfectly on rifle ranges across America, a living legend. But in their time, in the desperate, horrific struggle across the Pacific, one was clearly, undeniably superior to the other. The semi-automatic rifle had transformed every American soldier into a base of fire unto himself, and that individual advantage, multiplied across the vast expanses of the Pacific theater, helped ensure Allied victory. The last word belonged not to courage or spirit alone, but to the mechanical precision of gas-operated semi-automatic fire. 8 rounds, 1 pull of the trigger each, before that distinctive ping announced it was time to reload and continue the fight. The sound of inevitability, and the enduring lesson that while the human spirit is indomitable, in the crucible of modern warfare, it is often the spirit backed by superior technology that prevails.